Chapter 8 of The Boy Scouts in Russia by John Blaine. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Kangaroo 692. Within the enemy's lines. For many reasons, Fred did not want to hold a long talk with the Suwalki operator. German wireless stations were undoubtedly at work in the surrounding country, and though there was no great danger that his messages might be intercepted and read, it was not advisable, of course, to let the Germans, who were sure to be watchful, know that there was a private Russian station somewhere within German limits. The instruments here were tuned to a certain wavelength, and he guessed that this was standard for all Russian military stations, and different from that of the Germans. But when he held his circuit to listen, he got whisperings that sounded almost like static electricity. It was evident that a good many stations were sending, and that the air all about was full of the waves. So he contented himself with a brief and direct report of what had happened, explaining why Boris was not himself present to make this report. He asked for information as to the movements of the Russian army, but he got no satisfaction. "We don't know ourselves," said the Suwalki operator. "Things are moving very fast, but absolutely no news is being given out. I know that our cavalry, Cossacks chiefly, have crossed the border at half a dozen different points. The Germans and the Austrians have invaded Poland, and our troops have all been withdrawn from that region. The concentration there is going on at Brest-Litovsk, and behind the line of Warsaw, Novogorodsk. But here there are a good many troops. There may be Cossacks within a few miles of you. They are raiding. Here it is said that our first move will be to try to cut the German railways." That was all he could find out. He arranged for word of Boris's seizure to be sent to his father, and then closed his circuit and went below in search of old Vladimir. But now it was afternoon, and Fred began to think that if Boris was coming back that day, he would have arrived already. Plainly, it seemed to him, Colonel Goldapp must have decided to retain him as a prisoner. He wanted to get down near the parsonage again, but he was afraid to venture out by the secret passage. He didn't know how thoroughly he had frightened the soldier who had so nearly caught him. If the man had recovered his wits and decided that it was no ghost, but a very substantial and real person who had bowled him over, there would be doubtless a guard in the hollow, by the other entrance of the tunnel. And in any case, it was too risky to seek egress by that means again in broad daylight. "Vladimir," he said, when he found the old servant, "I want you to make me look like a German if you can. Disguise me so that I may go down toward the village in safety. Is it possible?" Vladimir studied him for a moment. "I think so," he said. "There are many of clothes here, and there is a man who has often helped when there were to be private theatricals." The transformation was soon completed, and when he looked at himself in a glass, Fred had to laugh. His clothes were those of a Prussian peasant, and a few very slight changes in his appearance had been made by the man to whom Vladimir had spoken. They worked wonders, and Fred decided that he could go anywhere in Prussia now with impunity. "Is it safe for you to leave the house?" he asked Vladimir. "Yes, for they think that I am harmless," said the old man. "I wish to know how to open the door of the tunnel from the outside, but I think it would be unsafe to go there directly. It will be better for you to start out and get there as if you had gone by chance. It is near the parsonage where my cousin is, and if anyone questions you, you could say, I should think, that you wanted to be near your master." "Yes," said Vladimir. "That would be safe." "Then do you go there and stay, unless they drive you away. I will go there too if I can, and if the coast is clear and no one is watching, you can show me, unless, indeed, you can tell me now." "It will be better for me to show you," said Vladimir. "The looks of the outside change constantly. A storm will destroy a bush or some other landmark there, and though I could touch the proper spot in the darkness myself, I would find it hard to describe it to you. I will start at once?" "Yes, and I will come to you, if it is safe, as soon as I can. I should not be more than 10 minutes behind you in reaching the hollow." Nothing about the whole adventure upon which he had embarked so strangely, and with so little intention on his own part, impressed Fred more than the unquestioning obedience old Vladimir yielded to him. More than ever before, he realized that the Suvaroffs must indeed be as great a family as his mother had declared. Though she became a true American, Mrs. Waring never ceased to love the land of her birth, and she had always tried to impress Fred with her own feeling for the great house to which she had belonged. "Such families as the Suvaroffs can do much harm to themselves and to others," she had said, "but they can also be of great service to those of their blood, to those who are dependent upon them, and to their country." The truth of this was constantly being impressed anew upon Fred at this time. He was struck especially by the difference between the way that the people of this house treated Boris and himself, and the attitude that had been noticeable in those who had served his uncle Mikhail Suvaroff. Mikhail was decidedly a greater figure than Boris's father, yet it was not devotion that he seemed to inspire. He won obedience not because his people were devoted to him, but because he had filled them with fear, and because they knew the consequences that would certainly follow if he were displeased in any way. It was still light when Fred left the house. He went out by a side entrance, reaching the road from the garden. Vladimir had gone down the hill before him. It was understood that he would manufacture some errand as an excuse for his appearance in the village. A number of the people of the village were in the open road near the great house. They stared at it curiously and with hostile murmurs. They paid no attention to Fred, however, and this convinced him that his disguise was good. He passed near them, and he breathed more freely when he had gone by. At the foot of the hill he turned away from the village. Here he remembered something that both amused and annoyed him. He had not asked where the parsonage was. He knew its location with reference to the outer portal of the tunnel, to be sure, but he had come to that underground. However, he remembered where the sun had been when he emerged into the open air, and after some profitless scouting about, a passing motorcycle set him on the right track. It set him thinking, too. "There are an awful lot of these fellows with dispatches running about," he said to himself. "It seems to me that this place is more than a colonel's headquarters. A colonel has just one regiment under him, and he certainly wouldn't need so many riders to carry his orders about, unless he were in command of a detached fort or position, and Colonel Goldap isn't. I guess he's there all right enough, but I've an idea that someone else more important is there as well. It might be worth while to find out just what was going on around here." But that could wait. For the moment his task was to meet Vladimir, and then to spy out the parsonage. Meeting Vladimir proved easier than he had hoped. He followed the trail of the man on the motorcycle until he was in sight of the Greystone parsonage, and then had his bearings exactly. He approached the old hollow cautiously, but no one was around. The ground was fairly soft. There had been rain within the last 3 or 4 days. And so, as he approached the spot of his encounter with a superstitious soldier, Fred was able to tell that no visitation had been made to the hollow. He marked the footsteps of the soldier. The man had evidently run from the place. Looking around cautiously, he saw that everything was clear and dropped down on his hands and knees as he reached the gully. Vladimir was waiting, and in less than a minute explained the secret of the door. "All right," said Fred. Now you get back to the house, and either be near the entrance to the passage yourself, or keep someone stationed there. I don't know what's going to happen, so I can't tell you, but I think that maybe I shall get Boris away from the parsonage." Vladimir's eyes gleamed. "I'm an old man," he said, "and I fear that I am useless. But if I can help to rescue him—" "If you can help, I'll let you know," said Fred. "But I don't know yet even how I shall set about it. And I think it's more important for someone we can trust absolutely to be in the house. There may be nothing for you to do here, and yet, if anything does come up, you will be needed there very quickly. Shall you go back through the tunnel?" "No. They may have watched me as I came out, and it will be better for them to see me return. No one suspects the tunnel yet, but some of these Germans are clever." "Right. Well, I know how to get into it now from this end, and that may help a lot. But I hope that when I use it again, Boris will be with me." He let old Vladimir go out first. Then, after waiting for several minutes, he went up the gully in his turn, and set out boldly and with no attempt to hide his movements for the parsonage. There was even more activity there now than there had been when he had first set eyes upon it. There were more automobiles, 4 of them altogether. At the wheel of each sat a soldier driver in gray uniform and with a cloth-covered helmet. Each car was of the same type, a long, rakish gray body, low to the ground. As he neared the house, an officer wearing a long gray coat came out, accompanied by 2 or 3 younger men. He turned to speak to them. Then he got into one of the cars, which immediately drove off. As it went, a peculiar call was sounded, more like a trumpet than an automobile horn. Fred guessed then what he had afterward learned to be a fact, that the automobiles used by German staff officers on active service had had horns that indicated the rank of the officer using them. It seemed to Fred that there were more officers than soldiers about. There seemed to be only enough soldiers to provide a guard. Sentries were all about, but there were officers almost in swarms. He walked along indifferently rather than boldly, and he was sharply challenged when he drew fairly near to the house. "You can't go any further, youngster," said the soldier. "The staff has taken this house." Fred stared at him rather stupidly, but turned away. Then he was called back suddenly, and for a moment his heart was in his mouth at the thought that his disguise might have been penetrated and that he was about to be made a prisoner. Like Boris, he was concerned only with the effect of this upon his plans. He did not think of his own safety, although, had he been caught, he might have expected the fate of a spy, since he was in disguise within the German lines. It proved, however, that he was not to be arrested. A young captain was eyeing him sharply. "Come with me, boy," he said. "We are short of servants in this house here. You'll do." For a moment he was indignant, but then his heart leaped suddenly. If he was taken into this house as a servant, he could find out all and more than he had hoped, and that without risk. End of Within the Enemy's Lines. Recording by Kangaroo 692.